It was 5 minutes to 1. Panama was immersed in nighttime silence. In the distance, over the jungle, the hum of turbines could barely be heard. Some in the area were already asleep, while others only pretended to be. These people had no idea that within minutes the sky above them would open like the lid of a shell, and from there, one by one, men would fall. Soldiers trained to go where others do not survive. It was the night of the 19th to the 20th of December, 1989. At that moment, the United States was launching a full-scale military operation on Panamanian territory. The operation was given a soft, almost biblical name, Just Cause. But for those under attack, there was nothing just about it. It was a precise, planned, and ruthless strike. One of the key objectives was Rio Hato airfield. It was not just a piece of land with a concrete runway. It was the heart of Manuel Noriega's military machine. Stationed there was a battalion known as Batallón 2000, an elite, battle-hardened unit, completely loyal to the dictator. If that airfield had remained under enemy control, the entire invasion could have collapsed. Troops were moved through it, and air support could be launched from there. Capturing it meant stripping the regime of one of its critical strongholds. The airfield was located approximately 145 kilometers from Panama City, a quiet, remote place ideal for discreetly stationing troops. But that very calm was shattered that night by American Rangers. 2 strike groups participated in the operation. The first consisted of around 500 troops from the 2nd Battalion of the 75th Ranger Regiment. The second included more than 1,300 soldiers from the 3rd Battalion of the same regiment. This was the elite, men trained to fight in any environment, mountains, deserts, jungles. Men prepared for years to accomplish in a single night what would take a conventional army a week. For the parachute drops, they used cargo planes, Charlie 130 Hercules and Charlie 141 Starlifter. For suppressing enemy fire positions, they deployed Alpha Charlie 130 gunships, heavily armed to the teeth. These were not just support aircraft. They were machines capable of turning a fortified position into scorched earth in minutes. The Americans aimed for speed and surprise. The landing was scheduled to begin deep into the night under the cover of darkness. But to intensify the effect, a tactic of psychological pressure was employed. Loud sonic interference and blinding lights aimed directly into the sky. In theory, this was meant to disorient and confuse the enemy. While the airfield's defenders were trying to understand what was happening, paratroopers were already hanging in the air. But even the most meticulously crafted plan has a vulnerability. In this case, it was the simple human sense of hearing. Panamanian soldiers heard the incoming aircraft long before the assault began. And when the first figures started descending by parachute, the ground greeted them with fire. The enemy opened fire even during the landing. Several soldiers were wounded mid-air. The element of surprise was lost. But that was only the beginning. When the Rangers touched the ground, the real carnage began. The enemy was ready. The Panamanians had taken fortified positions in advance. They did not panic and acted with precision. This was not an improvised militia detachment, but an elite battalion trained and armed to full military standards. They had heavy-caliber machine guns, concrete shelters, and well-covered landing zones. Every meter of the airfield was under control. The Rangers immediately came under intense fire. Many did not even have time to remove their parachutes. Bullets were whizzing literally over their heads. In such a situation, only 2 instincts kick in, drop or shoot. And they shot. With each passing minute, the Americans pushed forward. They advanced in waves, covering one another, moving from cover to cover. Somewhere, grenades exploded. Elsewhere, snipers were already working from positions taken on the approach to the airfield. Particularly fierce fighting unfolded near the barracks. That was where the bulk of the Panamanian forces held out. These buildings had been turned into real fortresses. Thick walls, sandbags, machine gun nests on the rooftops. It was toward them that the main American firepower was directed. Alpha Charlie, 130 gunships, circled over and over, firing on the fortifications from the air. The enemy tried to respond, but the United States had artillery superiority. Building by building, position by position, the airfield gradually came under the control of the Rangers. Several squads broke through to the hangars. There could be vehicles, ammunition, or enemy soldiers taking cover. Anything that could pose a threat was cleared. The Americans worked with precision, no unnecessary chatter. If something had to be taken head-on, they charged directly. If flanking was required, they maneuvered and attacked from the rear. They operated in sync, like a single living organism. The Panamanians, despite their losses, did not surrender. They had been prepared for this moment. Many of them believed they were defending their country from foreign invasion, and that gave them determination. But against well-trained American Rangers, with air support and numerical superiority, holding out for long was impossible. With every passing minute, the resistance weakened. One Ranger later recounted that at one point, the roar and whine of bullets at the airfield was so intense, it felt like being inside a massive engine. Everything vibrated: the ground, the air, your chest. The only thing left to do was move forward. By dawn, most of the airfield was already under United States control. The Panamanians had lost coordination. They began retreating. Some laid down their arms. The clearing phase began. In the hangars, in technical buildings, in underground depots, there could still be armed fighters ready to wage guerrilla warfare. The Rangers methodically swept every corner. There were American losses. Everyone understood that. There were fatalities, there were wounded. Several soldiers had been injured during the landing itself. But despite this, the operation proceeded exactly on schedule. The main objective was achieved. The airfield was taken, Noriega's battalion destroyed or routed. After securing the airfield, the second, no less important phase began, clearing and holding the territory. Capturing the runway alone was not yet victory. It was necessary to ensure that no hidden fighters remained in the area, that no ambushes had been prepared, and that the airfield could be used for further operations. In the vicinity of Rio Hato, dense jungle, chaotic development, old warehouses from the time of the Second World War. In such conditions, any bush could conceal a shooter, any building, a firing position. The Rangers operated in groups. Moving with extreme stealth, they entered houses, swept hangars, broke into basements. In some places, they found hidden PDF soldiers. In others, weapons, ammunition, and in some cases, documents left behind in haste. One Ranger later recalled how they came upon a radio station the Panamanians had used for coordination. It was still functioning, with conversations taking place on the frequency. Some surviving PDF soldiers were trying to re-establish contact with other units. These radios became valuable trophies. From them, it was possible to understand where remaining enemy forces were located, where they were retreating, and who they were calling for help. Meanwhile, the Americans established full control over the perimeter. Checkpoints were set up, firing positions deployed, and communication with command was ensured. The airfield was now ready to receive new aircraft, carrying reinforcements, equipment, and medical supplies. At that point, American losses amounted to 4 killed and approximately 18 wounded. These were serious, but within acceptable limits for an airborne operation. Most of the wounded were evacuated within a few hours. The medics worked efficiently, with medical teams arriving by helicopter as soon as the airfield was declared safe for landing. The Panamanian side suffered significantly heavier losses. According to various reports, around 34 killed and more than 300 taken prisoner. Among them were officers, including signal operators and instructors. Many initially refused to cooperate, but later began to provide information, under pressure but without the use of force. These interrogations played a role in the following phases of the operation. The capture of Rio Hato became a symbolic moment. It showed the enemy that resistance, even well-organized, could not stop the highly mobile forces of the United States. This was not just a strike against military infrastructure. It was a blow to morale, to the confidence of the Panamanian military in their own invulnerability. Meanwhile, for the United States Command, Rio Hato became a clear example of how such operations should be conducted: rapid airborne assault, surprise, pinpoint air support, and coordination across all units. All of this would become the foundation for future American operations on other continents. But it is important to remember that behind this precise tactic were living people. Every firefight, every raid, every clearing mission, and these were not statistics. They were soldiers who in that moment were inside a real battle with real danger, fear, sweat, dirt, and blood. And despite technological superiority, victory was not automatic. It had to be earned, step by step. By the morning of the 20th of December, the Rio Hato airfield was fully under the control of the United States. American flags were raised, equipment began arriving from the mainland, and the first war correspondents took photographs of the runway, scattered with signs of the battle. But most importantly, the elite battalion, considered one of the most loyal forces of Noriega's regime, was neutralized. This was a serious blow to the entire structure of Panama's defense system. Immediately after the capture of the airfield, search operations began in the surrounding area, in the jungle, along the highway, and in nearby settlements. The Rangers were looking for surviving PDF soldiers, weapons, and supply depots. The local population was in shock, but it quickly became clear that the Americans had not come with the intention of destroying everything in sight. Their goal was clear: the military structure of the regime, not ordinary people. That too played a role. Some of the population, weary of Noriega's dictatorship, did not interfere, and in some cases even assisted. In a global sense, the capture of Rio Hato became an example of modern, rapid, and technologically advanced warfare. It was a signal, not just to Panama, but to the entire world. The United States demonstrated that when necessary, they were capable of deploying thousands of troops across the continent, conducting a coordinated assault, capturing a fortified objective, and holding it without a prolonged campaign. But if you take away the maps, diagrams, and battle reports, what remains is the most important thing. It was a real war. Though short, with specific objectives, it was still a war. And for those who jumped with parachutes into Panama's night sky, who fought near the barracks, who walked along the hot tarmac with rifles at the ready, what was happening was not part of politics. It was a battle for survival. In the history of the United States Army, the operation in Rio Hato holds a special place. It was the first combat experience after Vietnam in which the Americans were able to apply new principles of warfare. In many ways, it was a test, and it was successful. Based on this operation, scenarios were later developed for Iraq, Afghanistan, and Yugoslavia. For Panama, it marked the beginning of the end of the dictatorship. The loss of the airfield, the destruction of the elite battalion, the arrest of key officers, all of this hit the regime harder than any diplomacy. Within a few days, Noriega's regime fell. He tried to take refuge in an embassy but was soon captured. Thus, one night, one operation, one airfield became the key to a change of power in an entire country. The story of the capture of Rio Hato is not just a military chronicle. It is an example of how determination, preparation, and precise coordination can change the course of events on the other side of the planet. But behind every such example are real people. Those who jumped into the night and those who waited for them on the ground. Each had their own truth, but history remembered some as attackers, others as defenders, and the airfield itself as the point where the end of a regime began. If you found this interesting, support the channel by subscribing. It helps us grow the project and bring you more stories like this, stories that are rarely told but are important to know. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Adam Stone.